Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, Chair of Property Investment Professionals of Australia, and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch, where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property investing. Hello, Ben.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Very, very good. Come on, get it out.
Up and about. Oh, yeah, it was a good win.
Yeah.
But we always go good against the Cats. I don't know why, but we just do.
Well, I went over to a mate's place to watch it. He's a Mad Cats fan, and I didn't expect that, so it pained me a little bit to see you guys do so well.
Well, the scary part was I actually tipped us, and then I changed the tip about 15 minutes before the start of the game when I was sitting in a park going, nah, confidence is down, belief's down. Even though we do really well against them, I just went, no. Whereas I tipped Essendon the week before, so I did think that we were due for a...
The worst thing about footy tipping is that I think it was a week before I actually had to, you know how you can see who's tipping who?
Yeah. And
I think you and a couple of the others up the top of the ladder there were tipping against Collingwood. So I was rooting for Collingwood, and it's an awful feeling. It's an awful feeling. I don't want to go back.
Well, it's an awful feeling when you barrack for Freo too, because of the frustrations you normally get there.
I thought you'd let that one go, but you didn't, so thank you for that. Hey, quick one, we've got a very special guest today before we get there. Big week this week, Ben, the underquoting laws were introduced this week.
Yes.
So we'll talk to our guest about that. But before we do, I'm just going to, my mindset theme, my wife gave this to me during the week, and she's going to put herself out there a little bit. She's writing a blog, and she kind of thought, well, you know, if I put myself out there, people.
Well, what's the blog called? Give it a plug.
It's My Little Pear Tree. It's our health journey. But the point of it is that, you know, once you get out there, you put yourself out there for a few pot shots. So came across this. It was a speech given by the former president of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. It's called "Citizenship in the Republic," and there's a quote within. It's 35 pages, but the relevant bit is this: "It is not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds can have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, and who comes short again and again, but there is no effort without error or shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotion, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly." And here's the key, Ben. "So that this place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." So what's the point?
Get off the fence.
Get off the fence. And if
have
you
a go, and don't be an opinion columnist. Mm-hmm. They're my worst. Well, don't start me on them.
Well, we're talking about footy. It's a classic game. If you've got the football players, there's 22 players, so 44, and then there's on a grand final there's 100,000. There's not that many people in the arena. So the ATO and CoreLogic came out with some data, and it'd be interesting for our listeners to know.
Yes.
That there's actually over 2 million property investors, as per lodging with the Australian Taxation Office. In tax returns. But in 2012 to 2013 tax year, there was 1,982,000. Fast forward, it tipped over in 2013. Now there's 2,051,000. But on a population of 25 million, adult workforce of 18 or 19 million, it's a very small percentage who actually get in the arena. So my message to everyone who's listening is, even if because we get people who write in, even if you've bought a property that's not ideal or appropriate, at least you're in the game.
Yes.
At least you've taken that first step.
Yes.
And I think it's important to remember it's the people that are in the middle that
totally. And if you go into the game with the right mindset and the right skills and tools, you'll stay in the game longer.
Yeah. So don't worry about those critics. Just get in there and have a go.
That was a great little speech from
Theodore Roosevelt, but I think that'll lead in nicely to Brad Teal.
Yes, a special guest.
Who's our very special guest, because Brad's been in the game for 42 years, 30 years, looking after his own real estate practice. And I'm sure, Brad, you faced your fair share of critics during that time who said you couldn't do it, but history says you could.
Yeah, welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for having me along.
No, it's a pleasure. So 30 years you've been Brad Teal Real Estate.
Correct.
You're a synonymous name in the northwest of... around the Essendon area in general, but you've been 42 years in the game, and you made sure I knew that in that email that we exchanged.
I did. I said, don't underquote me at 30 years.
And if we dig a little bit deeper under the covers, also a board member of the Essendon Football Club for a while.
For 11 years.
Yeah. So
all the issues. Proud life member, but
What era?
I got off the board in 2009, December 2009, but I've got to say that it's something years ago I'd put it on my CV that I was a life member and on the board, but now I hardly ever mention it because I've been quite ashamed at what's gone on there at the top of the tree and not really anyone taking full responsibility for what happened, and the players have suffered enormously.
But Baby Bombers, that was your reign, wasn't it? The premiership of 2000?
2000, that wasn't the Baby Bombers, 93 was the Baby Bombers.
93, yes. Okay, well, I'll forget that. Scratch that then. But you're around for that premiership?
Yeah, 2000.
Yep.
You can see we're not good at sport. We'll just stick to property.
Well, we just do it. But you're born, raised, and your entire working life in the Essendon area. So it'd be fair to say you know most streets in the region, right?
Yeah, it's not only that region because that region being Essendon, Moonee Ponds, Ascot Vale, went to Buckley Park, and but with 10 offices now from Gisborne, Sunbury, all the way through to Brunswick and Pascoe Vale, Ascot Vale, we cover an unbelievable geographic area. And for a company that is privately owned, it's probably, this is guesstimate, one of the biggest few singly owned companies that cover such a big geographic area with huge property management portfolio. Every Saturday do 10, 15, 20 auctions last Saturday. So we have a vast area of network through that northwest of Melbourne.
So being in the game for so long, what's the biggest change you've seen in 42 years in that particular region?
Traffic. Years ago,
Waverley Road.
Yeah, years ago I could do 6, 8 auctions and you'd get to the next auction in time. Last year I did an auction where I was going away for a few weeks and I had to do, I think it was 7 on the one Saturday, and I had a mate come around on a motor scooter, and that was some of the hairiest times of my life on the motor scooter, getting to and from auctions, but slipstreaming up the sides of cars at traffic lights because getting from Maribyrnong over to Essendon and Essendon to Brunswick and Brunswick to Coburg, the traffic is the big issue that you can never rely on how long anything's going to take you anymore. So that day on the motor scooter with Nashi was pretty hairy, but it was the only way I could guarantee getting to all of those auctions.
So obviously wealth of experience, wealth of knowledge. What are some of the characteristics, Brad, that you think make for good real estate? I mean, that's obviously, we go on about owner-occupier appeal, and we go on about making sure that there's strong demand from an emotional buyer to get the best results. What in your observation are some of the things that are a must-have?
Yeah, well, transport is absolutely crucial because if you're going to rent a property out, then having easy walking distance, and I'm talking 2, 3, 4, maybe 500 metres maximum, to a train or a tram is number one. I like what I called old bulletproof property, and that is flats that have been built in 1965, 1970, early 80s. After that, they became called apartments. And I like flats because they are $4,000 for a carpet, $4,000 for paint, $4,000 for light fittings and window furnishings, $8,000 for a new kitchen, and maybe another $8,000 for a bathroom. So they're economically easy to renovate. They are bulletproof in themselves because typically they are double brick. And one of the things that is a failure of landlords is the reinvestment back into properties to maintain high rent demand for their property and minimise vacancy factor. And so if you continue to take the depreciation allowance on your tax each year, then you should also have a mindset of reinvesting back in and replace carpets and give a wall a lick of Dulux if it's needed, and keep your property in high presentation, and you will minimise your vacancy factor in particular, but you'll also have upward pressure on your rent.
So Brad, so do you see period homes as good investment properties? I mean, first of all, come back to the flats. Good capital growth in those types of flats?
Typically in Essendon, Fletcher Street, Richardson Street, Edward Street, in Ascot Vale, the Parade, St Leonard's Road, anywhere where you've got easy walking distance to train, tram, local shops. cosmopolitan lifestyle in a city is really influential. Even in Sunbury, you go to the coffee shops on Saturdays or Sunday mornings, they're full. And living close to those is what people want.
Yep. So, but we also see, say, $1 million home, like a Cal bungalow or something like that, as a good investment if you've got a high surplus income?
You've got land is king, and you wouldn't want to buy $1 million home that is only going to give you $500 a week rent, because that's after expenses probably close to a 2% net yield. The big issue is just an old layman's rule of thumb that I would say to a lot of my staff is the first three numbers of your purchase price, 80% of that should be your rent. So if something is, for example, $1 million, then you would try to get $800 a week of the first three numbers. So 80% of that. So as a rule of thumb, on a $500,000 two-bedroom flat, you would get $400 a week, and it works. It's pretty accurate. But you'll struggle the higher the price. There are ceilings on rents in the northwest of Melbourne. $1,000 a week is a heck of a lot of rent. And so $600, $700, you'll get $700 a week on a $1.3 million home as you will on an $850,000 home. So you've got to work out if you're buying it for capital growth, and this is where buyers as investors and homeowners get really confused, because if you're buying it as a home in 5 years' time, it's not an investment today. You'll receive rental income, but it's not an actual investment. People buying for investment have a different mindset. They're going for income and hopefully capital growth. If you are buying it for your own principal place of residence, then you don't have capital gains tax, so it's already a bit of an investment for you anyway. So you've got to weigh up exactly what your end game is there. And if it's investment, go for yield, and capital growth will look after itself. But if it's for your home, buy the home that you want. And typically $1 million might be a really nice home, but it won't have the land that will surge in value going forward. And your $1 million will, like a single-fronted weatherboard in the Parade, Ascot Vale, might be $1 million now, and it's only on 250 square metres. You can renovate it. Kitchen, bathroom, the little extension at the back with the concertina doors out onto the al fresco patio at the rear, but it's still only maybe worth $1.25 million. And you'll have to continue to reinvest in that because your land is the thing that is restricting you. If you've got a 700 square metre block, you're going to have demand from developers, home site buyers and also home buyers going forward. So you've got simply more potential end users to keep your upward pressure on your price.
Yeah, scarcity test. Just for the context for the listeners, Ben, one of the reasons we've got Brad on is because he's one of the elite agents in Melbourne. He's been doing it for a long time.
Absolutely.
So share some of those insights. But if we could just rewind 42 years, Brad, just to build the backstory here. How did you get involved in real estate, and what were you doing before you made the decision to get involved in real estate?
I was 17 years old, and a great man called Ted Ashton tried to teach me how to box, and he used to spar with Lionel Rose and was a great mate of Jack Rennie's in Marco Polo Street in Essendon. And one Friday night at the McDonald's, Ted came up to me and he said, "Young Teal, can you box?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what you mean." And he said, "Well, can you box?" And he put his fists up like John Wayne would have, put your dukes up. And
Ivis doesn't know who John Wayne is.
And he punched you in the nose.
And he punched me on the jaw. And then he went on to say, and to protect that, if someone gives you one in the stomach, you'll fold over and you'll get one up. And he gave me one in the stomach, and then he followed up with a jab up. And I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But he came back about 10 minutes later with my old man, and he said, he hasn't whinged, he hasn't cried, he took it on the chin, and I like his style, and I want to know if he'll come and collect rents with me on Saturday. So I started riding my push bike.
Was it that tough in collecting rents?
Yeah, it was. He was giving me a lesson. And I started riding a bike from Napier Street, Essendon, down to Farnham Street, where people owned...
got a property there.
6, 8, 1 and 2 bedroom flats. I was going to say apartments, but they were flats in the court. There used to be the old dairy down there. And And I'd go in, a master key, the alloy lock would allow me to get into every flat. On the table in the kitchen would be a folder with the receipt from last week and it'd have the money in it. I'd rip the receipt out, stick some little bit of spit from the tongue on the receipt, stick it in their book and leave with the money. And I would ride back in 1974 with maybe a couple of $1,000 in a satchel over my shoulder. And then the next week, you would pray that it was a north wind because you'd ride up into the wind all the way to Glenroy and hope you had a tailwind coming home. Shop owners back then couldn't get out of their shops because trade was basically for fruit shops, bakers, chemists. It was an all-day trade and Saturday, and there was no EFT of funds. And so I would go around. They'd take the money out of the till. I would give them their receipt and ride back to work with the with the money in a satchel.
And hence the boxing training, Ben, because if you've got $1,000 back in 1974, if someone tries to knock that off.
Or ride quickly.
Yeah. So we caught up a couple of months ago, have a bit of a chin wag, and you're pretty bullish on flats, but also the one-bedroom flats. Can you tell the listeners about that?
Yeah, that not a lot of one-bedroom flats get made these days. It's predominantly twos, and the ones are too small, in my opinion. They run into funding issues because typically banks won't lend under 50 square metres. And the developers get around that a little bit with a 45 square metre and a 3 square metre balcony, but the banks, they're not as keen on that. Banks would probably rather lend on a stratum title than an under 50 square metre apartment that is built these days.
Yep.
But up until about 1975, there were a lot of one-bedroom flats that were built through all the way around Melbourne. 12 one-bedders, 8 one-bedders, they were blocks. And they were not a bad size. Some had a kitchen, some had a kitchenette. They had an ensuite off the main bedroom. They were fundamentally a good design. What's happened over the years is so many of these have been bought, renovated, licking a promise on them, and they get absorbed into the marketplace by 8 investors and 4 owner-occupiers. So the actual number of one-bedroom flats in these old blocks is diminished for rental. And because one-bedrooms haven't been accommodated that well, I don't believe, in modern planning design, particularly in the suburbs. In the city, there you can have a 20-storey tower of one-bedders and bed-sitters. But in the suburbs, the one-bedrooms are very, very good buying. And in Essendon, Moonee Ponds, Ascot Vale, you can buy one-bedrooms for $280 through to $320. And I just say accumulate. Buy them. Put down $40,000, $50,000, you will not have an issue with a settlement valuation from the bank saying they don't stack up. They are solid gold, in my opinion, and over a period of 7-8 years, if every 12 or 18 months you go and buy another one-bedroom or a two-bedroom, but end up with a portfolio. Later on in life, if you need money, you can sell one-bedroom instead of your whole property portfolio if you've gone and spent $1.5 million. And so one-bedrooms, I believe, are the one that is not on anyone's radar, and I think they should be.
So you've got a 280 to 300 value or purchase price, and you're getting around what's
280 to 300 rent.
So $1 per thousand.
Yeah. And in terms of investment, you can buy one that's got an old daggy kitchen, Laminex, lino on the floors. It's got broken Venetians or those weird and wonderful blinds with the pull chains that slide side to side, what are the vertical drapes?
Verticals, yeah.
They're horrible. And you can actually improve your lettability, minimise your vacancy factor and get a better yield, which is investing into your property by going and painting it internally over the next 4 weekends. Go and put a new stove in, maybe get stone put in, not Laminex, put new tiles, glass splashbacks, new taps that are easily replaced, put new doors on your robes so your robes aren't doors. You put double mirror slider so that it makes the feeling of the room being bigger as well. Go and put a new toilet seat on, go and put a twin flush toilet, and all of a sudden it's lettable, a bit more lettable for $280 to $300 a week, not $250 to $270.
No, I'm a big fan of the one-bedders. I bought plenty of one-bedders as a buyer's advocate over the journey because if you think about the the lone household is becoming more and more popular.
Yes, split houses. The other crucial thing is owners' corporation fees. Owners' corp fees for one bedrooms in a block of mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms in a flat in an apartment block will be between $1,100 and maybe $1,800 per annum, and that will include a sinking fund. Versus you go and buy an apartment, the owners' corp fees for a 1 bedroom will still be $3,500-4,000 because you have a lift that even if you're on the ground floor and don't use, you've still got to pay for the lift. You've got a fire system, you've got a smoke detector system, you've got a sprinkler system, you have the air exchanger in the underground, you've got the door that keeps breaking on the underground. All of these issues increase the owner's corporation fee to unsustainable, to make an investment work.
So these are the classic new versus old, which
Correct.
is something that we've been talking about a lot. In terms of, if you were to look at the best types of properties, what do you call the flats or the villas? Do you call them villas, the freestanding ones on a block at like 4?
No, they're a villa unit.
They're a villa unit?
Yeah, they're an actual villa unit. Yep. And typically they're a little bit further out. So they might be Strathmore, Nidri, Oak Park. This is on the northwest side of Melbourne.
Yep.
But you'll find them anywhere maybe 8 to 15 k's out from the CBD, as the higher density was restricted over the 80s and early 90s, where they didn't want 3-level flats going in, and so all of a sudden it became fit 3 villa units on a block that 3 doors down the street there are 12 one-bedroom flats. That has changed significantly now with the recent change to residential density allowances with the various height limits. So on an 11-12 metre height limit, you'll get 3 stories now. Now, that typically is inverted living, where they'll have the underground, the first floor, not underground, the first floor will be your garage and a laundry and maybe a little bedroom or study. Then upstairs to your living, and then the top floor will be your bedrooms. But they're over 3 stories, but they're normally only 4.5 to 5.5 metres wide. So that's getting a lot onto a small block.
Yep.
But it's the change and the higher density around district centres of tram, train, shops, some schools, but typically it's around trains and trams.
So those villa units, do you see them as being good investment stock?
They are, because they hold land. So you're actually buying your own block of land, and people like that feeling. And normally they're quite economical in regard to owners' corporation fees as well. There's public liability on a driveway, but ordinarily there's good division between the garages. Typically are between them, so you get good division. So you have your own property. They're quite good, but they've had a surge. So it's pretty hard to get a 2-bedroom villa unit anywhere in the northwest now under about 650, 700.
Yeah, great. How many auctions roughly do you reckon you've called over the journey? And I'm talking to the nearest 1,000.
Oh, it'd be 6,000 or 7,000.
So this is a podcast largely for the buyer side. We do have selling agents that listen to it, but largely for the buyer side. What are the couple of the obvious doozies that you see a buyer make when you're calling an auction to know, I've got the body language, I know what's going on here. What do you see?
Look, every Saturday when I go through the rules of auction, I discuss the aspect of the importance of bidding, and that the highest bidder will earn the right to negotiate one-on-one with the vendor at their reserve at the conclusion of the auction if I didn't get to the reserve. Buyers don't understand that one as a benefit to hold that bid. 90% of the time we'll get the job done, because you might have a bid at 680, the vendor's looking for 700, you get 690, the job's done. But there was not upward pressure to get it with someone else bidding to 685, 690 to get it on the market and the reserve hit. So understanding the process of holding that high bid is really crucial. But I have to start most of the auctions because people jockey for position and they'll wait until the end invariably. And the people who buy are the people who stand there and bid to their limit and turn and walk away when they've hit their limit. The people who wait and wait and wait, they get emotional and they get engaged in the end of the auction, not the whole auction. And I think that the people who buy best are the ones who stand and deliver a message by, I'm going to buy this, you've got to beat me, and they just go, bang, 550, 60 bid, 70 over here on the left. They'll think about it. Then when they bid 570, you go, bang, 580, hit it straight away. So fast return bidding is actually damaging the psyche of the other underbidders because, gee, this person really wants it. I'm getting to the top of my limits, they're going to buy it no matter what. And more times than not, they'll walk away.
Yeah, you're confirming what I believe is the only really tactic I've seen work consistently over time from a buyer is confidence. You know, I've seen them turn up in flash cars and try and create all sorts of images. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? I don't have a problem speaking in front of a crowd. In fact, I'm more comfortable in front of 20 people than in one-on-one. But that's the challenge for the buyer, isn't it? It's the
confidence.
And just that ice that's running through their veins.
It's also about not overthinking it. And on Saturday I did a property up in Fashion Parade in Broadmeadows, and straight after the auction we get a phone call, look, is it still for sale? No, it's not. It's sold under the hammer at 600. I didn't understand. Well, what is it that they didn't understand? Because I'm very clear on it's selling, it's going to sell. Are you sure you don't want to make another bid? Sold. And then you get the phone call half an hour later in the car and saying, look, can I make an offer of 605? Well,
you can,
but it's not going to. It's falling on deaf ears.
You can tell me.
But the bottom line is that they didn't understand the process, and they didn't believe that the bidder was real. They just didn't trust the system. And you got to, if you go along, bid and keep bidding. And if you don't trust the system, well, don't be a party to that system.
I've often turned up to auctions that I have no intention to buy the property, but because it's going so slow, I'll just put the first bid in. Jane punches me in the arm and says, "What are you doing?" I said, because I just know that it's a low ball bid, but I just try to start it because I might have a couple of auctions that I want to get to, so I want to get this one over and done with. Yeah. So I put a couple of bids in at the start, and if it gets passed into me, I know that I'm getting a bargain here if I'm going to buy it. So, yeah, it happens.
Now, Brad, a good agent would negotiate a property once every 7 to 10 days, whereas a buyer typically is once every 7 to 10 years. So over the journey, that's at auction. What about in private sale? What do you see as some of the avoidable mistakes that a buyer makes?
That depends on the agent, depends on the system, because there are some weird and wonderful ways of negotiating on a private sale basis. We would say if a vendor wants 600, that they will definitely sell at 600. Anything under that will require negotiation, and ordinarily will require an email and a text out to all buyers who have been through and be informed of the negotiation. So that opens up the possibility of getting other people engaged in the negotiation. I would avoid the closed envelope type of strategy because it's only under pressure that you will pay your highest price. You might put that offer in at 585, get told it's sold for 585, 500, and you don't get another chance to go, oh, I'll pay 600 now. It's the wrong mindset to benefit the vendor. The vendor isn't benefited by it, is what I'm illustrating.
There's no transparency.
No.
So even as a buyer's agent, I'm really caught. I mean, I have a great example in Sydney where I was an underbidder on a property at 696. Nice property. The winner, who I found out from the agent later, paid 742. So it was just miles apart, and I was the only other bidder that was anywhere near her.
But there's that 742, he'd be thinking, oh my goodness, have I paid $50,000 too much? Now that benefits the vendor, but that lack of transparency about real competition is the thing that is missing in that.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, we try and make it, even if it's gone to a boardroom style auction, that's terrific. As long as we see transparency, then we can go back to our client and know that we've done the right thing by them. Yep.
You're a property investor personally, Brad. Can you remember the first one you bought?
Still own it.
Yeah. Can you talk us through how you went? What the decision was like?
I was very, very nervous because it was back in a time where you had to have your money in a bank account for 12 months to qualify for an amount of four times your average annual balance in your savings account. So we got our money through a credit union. It was a state government-backed credit union, Latrobe Credit Union number 1 or something like that. It was $22,500, a 2-bedroom flat in St James Street, Moonee Ponds, and still own it to the day. And every now and then I throw some money at it with a new kitchen and appliances and fix this and fix that. But I've owned that for a very, very long time.
Why that property? What led you to that decision on that property?
That was affordability. First home, didn't want to pay rent, so we bought that before we got married, and painted it, carpeted it, new blinds, bought furniture to fit into it. So it was an owner-occupier, which when we moved out, really tight to buy a home only 2 years later, but to buy a home and retain that was unheard of back in 1977, 78. But I retained it and it's done well.
Beautiful. Now, most of the listeners we want to teach them to buy and hold, so they can